The Atlanta Hawks, the Eastern Conference runner-ups from last season, shocked the NBA with their playoff run into the Eastern Conference Finals. They defeated the Knicks in round one in 5 games with Trey Young doing all he did, becoming the villain, taking a bow at the Madison Square Garden. Moving on to the next round, they took the hearts of the number 1 seeded Philadelphia 76ers and seemingly ending the process. And eventually they went down in the conference finals to the Bucks, but it wasn't without a fight. And some would say, I don't know if I would say, but some would say if Trey Young didn't get hurt, they could have went to the finals. So with that end of the season last year, going into this year, the Atlanta Hawks had expectations. And this is a team I've been paying attention to since the start of the season, just because I wanted to see how they would fare with all the success that they've had and everything like that. And once you have a run like that in the playoffs, everyone takes notice and everyone knows who you are. You have a reputation and teams know that you can beat them on any given night. So they're no longer the Hunters. So without further ado, we're going to take a look, break down how they've been doing so far this season. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit the like button. If you enjoy content like this, hit the subscribe button. Without further ado, man, let's get straight into it, man. Let's get it. The first 13 games of the season for the Hawks was, in one word, it was rough. It was real rough. You know what I'm saying? Through that stretch of games, they were 4-9. And a big part of the 9 losses they had was a 6-game losing streak. The first loss came at the hands of the Brooklyn Nets on the road. They then returned home for a game against the Jazz that they lose to. And from there, they went on a 4-game Western road trip. They played Phoenix, Golden State, Utah again, and they finished with Denver. And guess what they did? They went 0-4 in that stretch, and they returned home with a 4-9 record. And you may ask yourself, what the hell went wrong in this stretch? And the Brooklyn game, it was a game that was competitive throughout, but after the first quarter, the Nets really took Trey Young out of the game. Javon Carter did a great job guarding him. DeAndre Bembry, Bruce Brown, they all put enough ball pressure on him to kind of neutralize his ability, because nobody can really stay in front of him. But if you stand in front of him, you're doing a damn good job. And the Nets on the other end had it going. LaMarcus Aldridge, KD, Joe Harris hit 5 threes, and really nothing else outside of Trae. DeAndre Hunter had 26 points on 1 missed shot. If you want to take something good away from him, Kevin Huerter had 16 points off the bench. That's pretty much it for that game. Moving on to the next night, they hosted the Jazz. Buddy, this game was ugly. Oh my gosh. At halftime, the score was 39-40. Nobody could buy a basket in the first half at all. You know what I'm saying? And for a little bit of the third quarter. Midway through the third quarter, the Jazz did turn up their defensive intensity. Got some easy shots to get a rhythm. And the Hawks kind of responded. They hung in for a bit. But the Jazz turned the knob a little bit more. Namely, Jordan Clarkson. He kept shooting the ball until that ball went in the basket. And the Jazz really blitzed them at the end of the third quarter and pulled away in the fourth. They were getting a lot of second chance points, first turnovers, and they really dominated the final stretch of that game. And moving on from that, they went on their first game of their road trip, and it was to Phoenix. Phoenix did win this game 121-117. There was no DeAndre Ayton for the Suns, but this game was really freaking fun. It was a back and forth affair until the very end. Trey Young and Devin Booker were going tit for tat. And the Hawks started to create a little bit of a distance in the game, being up by 12 in the fourth quarter. But you know who Chris Paul is, right? He wasn't going for that, bro. He was not going for that, bro. Chris Paul ruled the fourth quarter, ripping people, hitting timely baskets, dishing to teammates, and Book carried the way, scoring for most of the game and hit the dagger to end the game. This was a good game though. Trey Young got it going. He had 31-13, and John Collins was hooping too. He had 26-10. Moving on from that game, they went up to Golden State to see Steph Curry and the Warriors, and he had 50. He had 50. He had a great first quarter, but midpoint through the second quarter, the Hawks were up by 15. Like legit, like they were up by 15. But due to Steph, by the time it was halftime, it was cut to a 1-point lead. And for the majority of the third, it was a back and forth affair once again. The Hawks kept pace with the Warriors, but you know what happens in the third quarter when the Warriors play, right? Yep. And by the time the third quarter was over, the Warriors were up by 17 points. And it was pretty much over at that point. And in that third quarter, the Hawks had 20 points as a team, and Steph had 16 by himself. So there's no coming back from that, especially when they're playing at home. So that's another loss. And this one right here, going to Utah on the second night of a back-to-back, down 2 starters, no Bogdanovich, no DeAndre Hunter. To me, this is a schedule loss. You know what I'm saying? They missed that scoring punch, the secondary creation, and things of that nature, as well as the defense. Trey Young and Kevin Huerter did bring it, as well as Cam Reddish. But if you don't know, the Jazz are probably one of the best teams in the NBA. They shoot a lot of threes, they make a lot of threes, and they have great rim protection, and they play good defense. So they didn't win this game either. Which brings them to 5 straight losses. The final game of the road trip was in Denver. This was a game where the Hawks just fell behind pretty early, and they couldn't really make up ground. Every time they try to claw their way back into the game, the Nuggets would just close the door on them. So it was like, nothing you can really do about that. Sometimes that happens. So that was the extent of their 6-game losing streak. Now it's time to go back home and hopefully get some home cooking. After that long and disappointing road trip, the Hawks had returned home for a 5-game homestand. And within this stretch, they had a favorable slate of games to play and a chance to get some home cooking, bro. The first game was against the Bucks. They were missing Chris Middleton and Trae. Trae lit them boys up for 40. You know what I'm saying? And they proceeded to win that game pretty easily. Trae hit like 6 or 7 threes in like the first quarter. And they built a lead that proved to be insurmountable for the Bucks. Then they proceeded to beat a feisty Magic team. 4 of their starters tallied 20 or more points, and Lou and Gallo both put up 11 and 10 respectively off the bench. It seemed like they found a groove and started playing as a unit. Going on to beat the Celtics minus Jaylen Brown. They had another good unit performance against the Hornets. 5 players scored 15 points or better, and they concluded their 5-game homestand with the win against the Thunder. And really, this was a get-right stretch for the Hawks. You took your lumps on the road against the contenders in the West, and you bounced back from that rough patch to get to 500. It was vital, man. It was real vital. The reason I say it's vital is because the East, especially this year, the East is a conference where you do not want to fall behind. And just to let you know, in the Eastern Conference, right now, the 11th seed is about like 5-6 games back of the 1 seed. Whereas in the West, the 11th seed is like 10, almost 11 games back of the 1 seed, and the 10 and a half games back of the 2 seed. So it's safe to say that the East is very jumbled right now. You do not want to fall behind because you may not be able to climb out of it. So good job, Hawks. All right, so let's get into some of our player spotlights. First on the list is Kevin Huerter, aka Kayvon, aka Red Velvet. He's been, in one word, vital for the Hawks this season. He's been a Swiss Army knife for them, playing whenever he was needed. Whenever he's called on, he steps up. He can shoot it, create for himself, play make, and play defense. And right now, with the injuries that the Hawks are going through, with Bogdanovich, DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, who just came back tonight, but just the injuries and they've sustained on the wings, and he's been stepping up, bro. He's filled those holes. He's been really, really good. He's only averaging 11 points, about 3 rebounds and 2.5 assists a game, but he's had 7 games over 15 points, including 2 games scoring 28 points. So shout out to you, Kayvon. Keep hooping, bro. Next on the list is John Collins. John Collins is proving right now that he's worth his keep. His 5-year, $125 million keep. Just looking at his numbers, you'd be like, he's doing the same thing he did last year. But when you're actually watching him play, on some nights, it's not consistent, which is one of the things he has to work on. But there's something different about him sometimes when you watch him on the court. And I was like, there's no way his numbers are the same still. And I had to dive deep into the bag of advanced statistics, and his on-court plus minus and his on-off plus minus has jumped. You know what I'm saying? His on-court plus minus is at 6.5, and his on-off numbers are about 11.3. And contrast that with the 4.7, the plus 4.7 he had last year, and the 4.5 that he had last year. He's been growing, man. He's getting better as a player, and I feel like John Collins is going to be a cake that bakes a little bit slower than you would expect to. Sometimes with players like that, you're just going to have to go through it because Some players aren't going to develop in 1 year and be the best player ever. So, salute to you, John Collins. You've been hooping, and you might damn near try to get to all-star level the way you've been playing, bro. Just got to stay consistent. And now, to the main guy, you know what I'm saying? The ascended superstar, Trey Young. Don't look now, bro, but Trey Young seems to be getting better. And yes, I'm like dead ass serious. For all the talk that Trey got early on in the season, being about fouls and him being a good scorer due to foul baiting, that was false. All of those narratives about all those players, you know what I'm saying, plagued with that kind of narrative were false. And right now, Trey is like really hooping right now, bro. Like really hooping. And just to prove that, his free throw rate has dropped from 49.1% last season to 29.8% this season. And his trips to the free throw line have been replaced with him taking advantage of the mid-range. His shot frequency in the mid-range area, which is 16 to 22 feet, has increased from 7.5% to 13.6%. And he's shooting at a 48% clip. And overall, he's shooting a career high 45.6% from the field. And you know Trey still does his thing when he's hitting crazy threes, bro. And he's shooting that at a career high clip at 39.8%. If you want to, you can round it up to 40. And outside of his scoring, you know he can still play make. You know what I'm saying? He can still hit them hook passes, them nook and cranny passes where he's getting double teamed and he backs up for a second and whips the ball around and really anticipates where his man is going to get them easy and open looks. And more times than not, they be wide open, bro. Like legit wide open. And don't forget in the pick and roll that he's also a heck of a lob threat. And his connection with Clint Capella and John Collins in them pick and roll situations, or sometimes with John Collins in the pick and pop situations, the fit is like a hand in a glove. So shout out to you, Trey. You've been hooping, bro. Since hitting 500 and up to today, the Hawks have really been seesawing. They took care of business on a 2-game road trip, soundly beating San Antonio and Memphis. But when they returned home, they dropped the game to the Knicks. And then they went on the road to beat Indiana. But then they dropped 2 more home games to Philly and Charlotte. And up to today, after going on the road and hitting 1,000,000 threes to beat Minnesota on Monday, tonight against the Nets, it was really a back and forth game. It was an even game, but towards the end of the game, it seemed like the Hawks really just ran out of steam. I mean, we got guys missing, guys playing extra minutes and things like that. So, you know, I'm not making an excuse for it because that was a winnable game. They missed a lot of layups and a lot of floaters and just like bunnies that probably would have won them that game. But they're missing guys. They're tired, even though they had a long day stretch. You know what I'm saying? This really leans into my point. Going into this season, the Hawks did have expectations. They do have an ascending superstar in Trey Young, and they have a high-quality young core, and they made a run to the playoffs last season. But prior to last season, there was a lot of losing, bro. And the reason why I titled the video the way I did is because that's how I feel about the Hawks as of right now. They're a talented team. They're highly competitive, but they're still really young. Their best player, Trey Young, is 23. John Collins is 24. Kevin Huerter is 23. DeAndre Hunter is 24. Cam Reddish is 22. Onyeka Okongwu is even younger, and the list goes on. And consistently winning in the NBA is hard, bro. You have to bring it every night. You know everybody knows who you are, and they're going to be prepared for you. You have to be able to fight through rough patches, scrap it for wins when people are down with injuries, and this is the part of the process that they're going through right now. They're missing 2 starters. Bogey hasn't played in the past 2 weeks with an ankle injury. DeAndre Hunter is going to be out for the next month or so. Cam Reddish just came back from an illness and a sprained wrist. And Onyeka Okongwu hasn't played yet this season. Solomon Hill just tore his hamstring. He's not going to play for the rest of the season. And to close this out is nothing more than to say they're at 500 right now. And in my opinion, they're in a good place from what they've experienced this season, and they're still learning how to win.